Hello everybody. Welcome to the second episode of Tea Time with Ayla. I am Ayla, this is my tea, this is sushi. You'll probably see eggs coming a little later. He's adventuring right now. So to introduce myself, I'm Ayla. I wanted to start this podcast. A friend of mine motivated me to share my story. Not because I have some crazy traumatic story, but I've just been through life, I guess, and I wanted to share with you guys my experiences through things that I've read, chapters that I've read, or videos that I've seen that have helped me and change my life, and also share my perspective and my side of what happened through these chapters, and how I grew through these chapters, and the different stages of my life that I was reading these things in, and how they helped me. And I wanted to do this also not to share my story only for the sake of it, but maybe these things that I read, these books that I've read, could also help somebody else who doesn't know about these books, or simply just to hear someone else's story and relate to it and know that there is a light at the end of the other side of the tunnel. So today I want to talk about a chapter from the book 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. He is such a phenomenal author, eggs. So I want to talk about a chapter from the book, from the 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And before I go into it, I do want to warn everybody that I'm going to be talking about very touchy shit. So if you're easily offended, maybe don't continue. Because I'm just going to share my true, authentic self, and I'm not going to filter myself for people who tend to push their own shit on people, and who unfairly, make it a thing about everything. Anyways, I'm not gonna go on a tangent. So I want to talk about a book from the 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. It is the third chapter. It is called Take Care of Yourself Like Someone You Were taken care of, or someone that you were responsible for. And I absolutely love this chapter because it just really, really touches home base with me. It really, really touches home base. And I really love Jordan Peterson because he always touches home base, and he has such a scientific mind. He's like everybody's internet dad that they never had, and just delivers things in such a thorough way, And I know Jordan Peterson is a very controversial topic, I think unfairly, in my personal opinion, because when you read his book, like if you read his book in a open state of mind, in a I want to live a less chaotic life, because his book is literally called The Antidote to Chaos, and it just, when he talks about a topic, he talks about the issue, and he talks about why that issue exists in a raw, unfiltered way. And I think that is the best way to deliver information, to deliver the truth. You can't expect people to give you a fact in a way that you want it. I don't know, like, I think there's a reason why they call it a hard truth, right? Because it's not an easy pill to swallow, but if we would just swallow the pill, ooh, that was hot. If we would just swallow the pill, maybe our life would be a little bit easier. And it's true. And I think that it's odd that people got so offended by him, because people are so incapable of dealing with other people having a contradicting opinion, right? Which is sad, but whatever. I'm going on another tangent. So, I love Jordan Peterson because he's so to the point. And I think that is such a beautiful thing. And this chapter in particular really changed my life in a particular way, because it changed my life subconsciously. Subconsciously in the sense that I read this chapter and absorbed the information, but not like intentionally, you know? Like, when I say subconsciously, I mean in a way where your mind absorbs it and you start doing it, but you're not intentionally doing it. And when you're consciously doing something, it's like, I'm going on a diet. Like, I'm consciously going to change my diet, actively change my diet with intention. I mean, subconsciously. Like, I read this book and I read this chapter and I thought it was such an interesting chapter, right? Because he explains, take care of yourself like you would take care of someone else. And at first you're like, okay, like, why, right? And he talks about how we always take better care of other people. I think everybody's guilty of that. Is that, like, let's say, like, I take care of my cats, like, better than I take care of myself. And the reason, and I freaking love how he goes into this, like, psychological reason that just makes perfect sense, which his chapters are so detailed, and then you read the last sentence, you're always confused, and then you read the last sentence and you're like, oh my fucking god, like, that makes so much sense. And what's beautiful about Jordan Peterson is he goes into detail of the problem, and then he goes into why that problem exists. Which, I mean, think of it. If we have something tangible, if we have something like, this is why we are the way that we are, whether we like that reason why or not, I think it gives you so much purpose. It gives you so much, like, understanding. Like, someone's like, okay, you're, like, fucked up, but that's okay because humanity is fucked up. And this has always been a thing. This is tens of thousands of years of humans who did the same shit, right? So it's like, it's very liberating, right? When you're reading that, it's not just me. It's not just me. Everybody does this. Humanity does this. Like, humanity is fucked up, right? And that's the reasoning, is that, okay, to get back to my point, the chapter is about taking care of somebody like you taking care of yourself like you're taking care of somebody. And the problem is that we all do this. Like, I take care of my cat better than I take care of myself, like I was saying before, because I see my cat as an innocent creature, right? As something that would do no harm. Which is crazy, because these are little, I mean, she's so cute. Oh, she melts my heart. But yeah, you see, like, this is such a beautiful animal, but she's a fucking killer. Eggs killed a bird on the balcony who was just like chilling, minding his own business. Killed the fucking bird. But I still see these creatures and I take care of them so well. I brush them all the time. I love them all the time. I play with them and I feed them the best food, the expensive food. I probably spend more money on them than I do on myself. But that's the problem, right? And if you would do so much for another creature, for someone who is not you, why? Like, imagine if you put the effort in yourself, the same effort that you put into other people. Just think about it for a second. Just for a quick second. That's all you want. Is for someone to treat you how you would treat them. So why not instead treat yourself like you treat other people? I'm just gonna let that sit. Why not do that? Why not treat yourself like you would treat other people? Imagine how much your life would change. Imagine how my life would be different if you chose to treat yourself how you treat other people. And the reason why we don't take care of ourselves, this is not the reason why, but it is one of the reasons why we treat ourselves so fucking shitty, is because we know what humans are aware of. We know that in the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves is something fucked up. It's something fucked up. I mean, think of it. Like, you know what you're capable of. You know the capacity of your mind, of your darkness. You know you could go there. You think fucked up thoughts all the time. And I think it's because we think these fucked up thoughts. Eggs. Sorry, guys. It's a good thing I used 2 cameras, eh? Ay. Okay. And it's because, what the fuck was I saying? Okay, yeah. So it's because we think these fucked up thoughts. Everybody thinks these fucked up thoughts. Serial killers just go through with it, right? That's the difference. Everybody thinks it. Everybody thinks it. You can't deny it until we think it. Because it's true, we think it. But I think it's because we think these thoughts that we don't take care of ourselves. And that's what Jordan Peterson is explaining in this chapter. Well, partially, this is what he's explaining, is the reasoning for this in the chapter, for this problem, right? For this, us not taking care of ourselves like we take care of other people, is because we see the best in other people. Because we're not in their heads. We don't know the fucked up thoughts that they think. If you knew the fucked up thoughts that they thought, maybe you wouldn't think they were so great. What about that? Thank you. I appreciate it. Ooh, this ring light, I don't know how people do this. This shit is fucking... Ooh. What was I saying? Right. If you would take care of yourself like you took care of other people, your life would change. And it's true. And the reason we don't is because of the fucked up thoughts that we think. And that's okay. Everybody thinks these fucked up thoughts. I think that is the biggest lesson to learn in this chapter, is you have a clinical psychologist telling you that everybody thinks these thoughts. Not everybody acts on them. Most people don't, thank God. But A lot of people think these thoughts, and I think it's because we think these thoughts that we think that we're monsters. We think that we're not worthy of being taken care of like that. And one thing that I learned is when you like literally think that you're a monster, and I've been there, right? Thinking that I'm a monster, thinking I'm such a terrible person. You emit that energy into the universe. You attract, because you, like law of assumption, right? Because you think and you in your heart feel that you're worthless, that you're a monster, that you're a terrible person, that you've done these unforgivable things. That is exactly what you attract, right? Like, you attract shitty situations. You attract people who think the same way of how you think of yourself. And that's why I think you never find a partner who takes care of you the way that you want to be taken care of, because you treat yourself like shit. And when you treat yourself like shit, you're gonna attract people who treat you like shit. So when you start to take care of yourself properly, with love, unconditional love towards yourself, you attract people who love you unconditionally, who love you in the way that you love yourself, because everything in this life is a mirror. And I learned that through this book and through watching other episodes that I will share with you in future episodes. But when I say I registered this book subconsciously, I read the information and it just got stored, and my mentality changed. I started to notice how I treated other people and how I treated myself. It kind of like lit a little dim light bulb. It made a discomfort. Whenever I learn something in life that it's like a universal lesson that I'm supposed to learn, I don't register it right away. I retain the information and it causes a discomfort. And then one day I'll be talking to myself in the mirror and I'll be like, oh my fucking God. That's exactly that. That situation is what this was, right? Like for this, I noticed how people were treating me, and then I noticed how I was treating myself. And I also noticed how I was treating people, and how those people that I treated well treated me. And that was very important, because I've been in a series of stupid, fucked up relationships. God bless him. God bless him. I wish you well in hell. I'm joking. No, seriously. I learned so much from those crazy experiences. And I think that's what people tend to forget. Fucked up things happen. They do. They happen to everybody. But at the end of the day, you learn so much. You do. Like, I think back today, and I appreciate the lessons I learned, and I understand why I went through what I went through, and why I learned those lessons, and why those lessons had to happen at that time for me to understand what I do now. I mean, obviously hindsight is 20/20. But also at the same time, through therapy, I started understanding the concept of taking care of your inner child, getting to know your inner child. Because I was introduced to the concept of trauma and childhood trauma and behavior patterns that are learned because of trauma. And I started to learn to make the differentiation about who I really was and who the trauma made me. And there's a very big difference. It's a very, very big difference between, because sometimes you do things and you chalk it up as who you are, but it's not, it's your trauma. So when you start to learn to differentiate it, you have to reconnect with your inner child, because a lot of these issues and a lot of this trauma comes from your childhood or comes from your early teenage years or whatever. And you have to reconnect with whoever you were that moment. And a lot of the times it's your inner child. And I think your inner child is a really big part of you, because it's like a different version of you. It's the beginning you. It's the you that aspired. It's the you that imagined, hoped, dreamed. The untainted version of you before life swept the rug from under your feet. And reconnecting with this person, reconnecting with this child, it's quite an experience, because think of it in the sense of when people tell you, talk to yourself like you talk to your best friend. Have you ever noticed, like, when you're talking to yourself, you're so fucking mean to yourself? You constantly tell yourself, you're a piece of shit, you don't know how to do fucking fuck all, like, you, like, who the fuck do you think you are? Imposter syndrome all the time. Who do you think you are? You think you that bitch? Da 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 da. That's you in your head. And you should think you're that bitch, because you are. What the fuck is I saying? Yes. Just talk to yourself like you talk to your best friend. Like, would you tell that to your best friend? Would you tell your best friend she ain't shit? Would you? No. Would you let your boyfriend would you let your best friend's boyfriend treat her like shit? Would you just let a guy treat her like shit and not tell her shit? Just allow that to happen? I mean, she can make her choices, but you know, would you do that? No. So why do you do that to yourself? In this life, we only get one mind, one soul, one body. And we're sitting here treating it like shit. Eating junk food. I mean, listen. I love me some cheeseburgers. Don't get me wrong. But when we talk to ourselves like fucking trash. We're so rude. Why are we so rude to ourselves? I think it's because we think fucked up thoughts. Well, partially because we think fucked up thoughts, and I think because we blame ourselves for a lot of our fucked up traits. But I learned that these fucked up traits are usually because of trauma. And we heal trauma by healing that part of ourselves, that version of ourselves who got traumatized. So a lot of the times it's your inner child. So imagine if you wouldn't treat your best friend the way that you treat yourself, that you wouldn't allow people to treat your best friend like you allow people to treat you. Imagine if that was your child. Imagine if you today were with your inner child. Just you and her. And someone was treating her the way that a person is treating you. A child. Would you allow that? Or would you slap that person in the face and tell them to fuck off? So, if you wouldn't let someone treat your inner child the way that they're treating you, then why the fuck are you allowing that? Why the fuck are you allowing that? You are intentionally now, because you're conscious of it, letting your inner child be treated like shit. And I realize this. Biggest thing that I realized. I mean, I know I have fucked up boyfriends, like the past is the past, but I had this one boyfriend, he was like, I had so many fucked up relationships that this guy, to me, was the healthiest guy that I ever dated. And he was. But doesn't mean he was healthy though, you know? He was the kind of guy who saw the worst in everybody. And he saw the worst in me. And he made sure that I saw the worst in me too. I don't think he intentionally did it, because he's a wonderful guy, he's got a big heart. But unintentionally, because he had an issue with my past, he had an issue with how I lived my life, not in the moment, but in the past, like, he called me gross, you know, like he made me believe the worst in myself, because he was so really like full-heartedly against my past and like how I lived my life, and he was like mortified by it. That's his opinion, that's his perspective, right? And I never had an issue with my past before I met him. And I unconsciously allowed him to ingrain this mentality, this opinion, this perspective into mine, right? And I didn't notice it until I read this chapter. I didn't notice it until this was in my subconscious, until I started noticing how people treated me and how I treated myself. And one day, even after we broke up, I reread the chapter. Okay, so I reread the chapter maybe a month before. We had broken up, it had been a few months, like 6 or 7 months, and we were still friends, and we had started sleeping together again, and like everything was going back in like a dating direction. And I reread this chapter, and something happened between us. There was an argument that happened between us. And for some reason, my brain just was like, oh my God, I would never allow my child or my inner child to be treated that way. And I am allowing her to be treated that way. I am allowing someone in my space that thinks the worst of me, that makes me think the worst of myself. And you cannot grow in the same place that you were broken. You cannot heal in the same place that hurt you. It's impossible. And that is exactly what I'm trying to do. And if my best friend was doing that, I would have told her what she was doing. Because deep down I knew, but I just allowed it to happen because I wasn't treating myself like someone that I was responsible for, someone that I cared about. And I realized, I don't fucking care about myself. That is, I think, the biggest moment when you're reading this chapter. Is he describes the shit that people do to themselves, and you're like, I do that to myself. I treat myself like shit. How do I go about changing that? That is hard. That is a hard question, because people get this information, and it's heavy fucking information. You are now faced with the fact that you can't stand yourself. You don't like yourself. And that's why you don't take care of yourself. So what do we do about this? A lot of people, now I'm mad, you said some shit, don't fucking talk to me like that. Because a lot of people are incapable of introspection. I think introspection is the hardest fucking thing to do, because first, when you start to introspect, you see what, like, it's like a hoarding house. There is cobwebs and shit everywhere. There's skeletons in the closet. You don't know what the fuck they are. So it's scary. It's a really scary place. Your mind, when you really start to notice it. When you start to notice your mind, it's a very, very scary thing. And a lot of people, they turn around and they're like, yeah, no, fuck that. Fuck that. And that's what Jordan Peterson's book, I think why it sparks so much anger, is because the people who read it, they are now beginning to introspect. And they're pulling a fucking tantrum, right? They're like, because they can't. A lot of people can't introspect. It's a hard thing to do. And that's okay. But fuck you, do it. People need to introspect. People need to get to know themselves. I blame society. They just fucking fill our mind with bullshit. So much bullshit that we don't even know ourselves anymore. We know ourselves by the things that we have. But when you start to try to know yourself for who you are instead of what you have, it's hard. Because you don't know who the fuck you are. You don't know. You just know the things you've done. I don't think we ever really absorb anything until we stop and we ask the question, who the fuck am I? And this book, this chapter, is very in your fucking face. It's okay. Not that I hate myself, but I don't like myself. And that's why I don't take care of myself. Which causes introspection. Now we have to say, okay, how do I change that? How do I start to like myself more? Well, to like yourself, you have to get to know yourself. And now comes a very fucking important question. Who am I? It's a very simple question. Except it's not. Right? Most people, they say, who are you? And this is from the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Love this book. I will talk about this book in another episode. The best book this book, hands down, best book I ever read. So, who are you? Who am I? Think about it for a second. Most people, who are you? I am Susie Q, whatever the fuck you are. That's your name. That's not who you are. That's your name. You are your name. If your name wasn't Susie Q, would you be Susie Q? Yeah. Okay. So who are you? Well, I grew up in Baltimore. No, that's where the fuck you grew up. That's not who you were. Well, I'm Martin's wife. Were you not Susie before you met your husband Martin? Before you got married? I guess. Right? You were. And you can go on. You can say, well, I'm an accountant. Okay, but are you not you when you're not being an accountant? Yeah. Okay, so who are you? Who are you? And if you want to get really technical, you're none of those things. Who are you? Who sees through your eyes? Who experiences every moment, every flavor, every breath, hears every meow of your beautiful kitty cats? Who is that? And you have no idea. But it's you. That is you. You are the soul or the consciousness that experiences all. Because without your consciousness, your body would still work, but would it experience? That's the question. Now, to get there is a very long process, to get to that answer, to get to that understanding. And before you get there, before you are open enough to receive and comprehend that information, you got a whole ton of shit to do. You got a whole ton of work to do to get to know who you are. Because you get to know a part of yourself, like what you like. What you like is a pretty good way to start. What you don't like. But those are not who you are. No. And then there's the shadow work. You say, who am I? And then you turn around and you look at what's in your mind. Because we associate ourselves with the mind, which is a very natural thing to do, right? I come from here, right here. You say, who am I? And you say, well, I am my mind. And then you get into the illusion that you are your thoughts. Because it's a voice that constantly speaks to you. But I did. I wanted to do this and I don't want to do that. Did you do this? Where's my passport? Right? Constantly. So you're like, who's this voice? This voice must be who I am. This voice must be who I am. But it's not. And then you start to get to know your thoughts. And you pay attention to them because now you're asking, who am I? So this question really makes you turn your attention into yourself in a way that you never have before. And that is the first thing that you're confronted with, is your thoughts, is the way that you feel. And then you confront your emotions. You're like, what? I feel fucked up. I feel fucked up. Why do I feel fucked up? Is it because of my thoughts? Is it because of my situation? Is it because now you're getting to know your feelings? You're getting to know your emotions. And getting to know your emotions allows you to deal with them. And then you understand that emotions is energy in motion. So emotions, everything's energy. Everything's a flow, everything's a wave. So your emotions are there because there's energy that didn't pass through you. So when a situation happens and we don't care, like the guy farted in the bus, is because the energy of the situation flowed through you. You allowed it to just like, whatever. And when you don't, it causes an emotion. Because the energy in motion is stuck in your body because the thing bothered you. It bothered you. And we tend to hold on to shit. That guy bumped into me, dropped my coffee everywhere, and he didn't say sorry. And you'll notice when energy is stuck in your body because it goes through your head like a fucking movie on replay, okay? How many times did someone piss you the fuck off? And you, for like the whole day, 2 days, 3 days after, you're in the mirror or in the shower and you're like, that motherfucker, fuck him, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, fuck that motherfucker, and you have a whole fight with him, you tell him off 45,000 times, and then you see him the next day and you're steaming because this energy is inside of you. Just circling. So how do we fix that? Why does that happen? Because this energy is blocked. You're not allowing it to pass through, like the guy who farted in the bus. You didn't give a fuck about the guy who farted in the bus. Maybe someone else did, but you didn't. You didn't give a fuck. You were whatever. It's a natural thing. So when you have an emotion, it is so important to feel it, to understand it, to acknowledge it. And that's a very difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult thing to do. But when you learn Just let it go. It doesn't matter, right? If it's not going to matter in 5 years, I'm not going to waste 5 minutes thinking about it. Let it go. And that emotion will flow with it. But what's important is that you see it, you acknowledge it, and you say, okay, I acknowledge this energy is getting blocked inside of me, so I'm going to let it go. And that is so important. But you learn that, and that you have to learn that, and that is another step. And in learning your emotions, and now that you understand that it's energy in motion and there's a blockage. So these old emotions, this old shit that I'm constantly hashing out, is because I'm not allowing that energy of that moment to flow. I am keeping that energy inside of me. And in Hinduism, it's called the samskara, I think, I'm pretty sure. It's a blockage of the heart center. We're not allowing this energy to pass. We're not saying, you know what, it happened, it's a moment that no longer exists. It happened. It happened, and that's it. I'm not going to dwell on it. I learned a lesson from it. I feel the emotion, I acknowledge the emotion, and I let it go. We're not doing that. But now, you have not let go of a lot of shit, okay? Imagine you're only doing this in your 30s, okay? You're only going through this in your 30s. Imagine people in their 50s, their 60s. They're reading this book, they're reading this chapter, and they're at this step of this introspection journey. 60 years old, who am I? Let me hash out all my old emotions for 60 fucking years. And you wonder why they're mad. You wonder why they're mad. Of course they're fucking mad. Do you know? Do you know how fucking crazy it must be to open a door? Imagine your emotions is a room, okay? And you open this door and it's your emotions of 60 years of situations that happened that got stuck in your heart center, that got stuck in your body energetically. I'd be mad too. I was mad, and I was 21 when I did this, when I started this journey. And I'm 23 and I still go through shit. It's just been 2 years and I'm just now understanding energy and motion, emotions that are stuck up. But now, to be able to pinpoint the exact thing that happened to you to make you feel the way that you feel after that amount of time of bullshit that happened, that is another issue, right? Which is therapy comes in, because it makes it a lot easier. But let's say for me, an example, I didn't like it when people watched me eat. I didn't like it when people commented on my food. If you commented on my food, I would immediately not be hungry. I hated that. I didn't like it when people watch me eat. I don't like people don't talk about my food, right? Because it literally, I'll stop eating. And I just thought that I was like that. I didn't realize I was that way because of any reason. I've always been like that. And one day, I'm in my house high on fucking mushrooms, and this thought pops into my mind, and I was like, why the fuck do I feel like that? Why do I not like it when people comment about my food? Why do I feel so bad when people comment about the way that I eat or whatever, anything to do with food, right? And I realized it's because my family constantly commented on my food. They're like, oh, you're gonna eat all that? Oh, you're eating so slowly. Oh, is that all you're gonna eat? Or you're gonna eat that? That's what you're gonna eat? Constantly did that shit, constantly said that shit. And my last boyfriend constantly did that shit too. Oh, you're gonna eat that? You're gonna eat all that food? Oh, those pants look a little tight on you. So this trauma created this weird thing with food for me, which I'm still working on, right? Like, I'm still working through that, but now that I understand where that came from, but that's very hard, right? I had an epiphany on mushrooms. The mushrooms tell you all the truth in the world, whatever you need to know. The mushrooms, they will tell you. But it took me, after 2 years of trying to heal my trauma, it just popped in my head. And the thing is that getting to know yourself is a lifelong journey. But this beginning stage of starting to get to know yourself is hard, because first you have to go and acknowledge all this fucked up shit, right? You have to acknowledge all what we call shadow work, right? Shadow work is acknowledging all the grimy fucking parts of you. And those grimy fucking parts of you are the exact reason why you don't take care of yourself. Imagine that. And that is the whole point of this chapter by Jordan Peterson, to take care of yourself like you take care of someone else. But the reason why you don't take care of yourself like you take care of someone else is because of the grimy fucking parts of your mind. And the beginning of the journey to self-love, to taking care of yourself properly, like you take care of other people, is getting to know who you are. And to get to know who you are, first you got to do shadow work. You have to acknowledge, you have to venture into the deepest, darkest cracks of your fucking mind and soul and get to know your fucked up parts, because it's only by getting to know your fucked up parts that you are ever going to heal them. And that means acknowledging the fucked up things you do, the fucked up things you did. Oh, I was gonna kill myself. My sweater was thirsty. Oh, I thought it was getting dry. So I go on a tangent. I'm in the middle of a tangent. Oh God, I'll try. Okay. Yeah. It's getting to really get into the nitty gritty with yourself. And getting into the nitty gritty with yourself, I think it's the hardest things you can ever do. Some people don't come back. They go into the darkness and all they see is the darkness. Because once you acknowledge all of the darkness, you have to come to accept it. And that is the hardest part, is accepting it. Not just acknowledging it and knowing that it's there, but saying it's okay that it's there. It's okay. It's not the end of the world, because I can heal. Because then the important question is, how can I heal those parts of me? How do you heal those parts of you is understanding where they came from. And you can only understand where they came from by putting yourself back in the shoes of who you were when they happened. And that is getting to know your inner child. That's getting to know your inner child. I wrote something down because it popped into my head yesterday. And when I was dating this guy who made me feel like less of myself, made me feel the worst of myself. So I was dating this guy who loved me, but always saw the worst in me, which made me believe that that was who I was. And it was by starting to take care of my inner child that I realized how she was being treated. Like how you how you'd look out for your best friend. I started to realize, now having this new perspective, that I wasn't being treated in a healthy way, and quite the opposite, actually. So when you now accept the darkness and you choose to heal it by getting to know your inner child, you realize that a lot of these ways that you feel about yourself, you're treating yourself terribly. And when you start to notice how you treat yourself, you start to notice how other people treat you. And there's like this illusion that kind of like wipes itself away. You're like, people treat me pretty good, right? But they don't. They don't. They treat you like shit. Excuse me. And you think they treat you well. Because I'm sure, in part of the thing that you think they treat you is the fucking story that you made up in your head about what your relationship was. A lot of women do this. They'll like make up a whole fucking fairy tale story about this guy who's a fucking loser with no high school diploma, right? So if women are guilty of doing this, I'm sure men are guilty of doing this too. And because we treat ourselves so fucking badly, we don't even notice how other people are treating us. We think they're treating us well because in comparison to how you treat yourself, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. But when you notice it, because you're getting to know your inner child, because now the next thing is that you do it. You start to treat yourself, or you at least hold people to a fucking standard to treat you in a better way, right? Like, would you let a guy treat your best friend like that? No. So why are you letting them treat you like that? So when they start to do shit and you're like, it always takes like 3 or 4 days where you're like, that was fucking rude. That was not okay. Because in the beginning, and to the people who are on this journey, in the beginning of this journey, don't be hard on yourself. You have to be very gentle with yourself. And I know that's hard because you're in a place where you're constantly like, you're a piece of shit. You don't know what the fuck you're doing, right? But that is not you. That voice is not you, okay? So you're gonna learn how to control that voice, and I will talk about that in other videos. But now that you're like noticing, but like it's so important to be gentle with yourself, and it takes a couple days in the beginning, right? Because now you're starting to notice when things bother you. When things bothered you before, you didn't care because you didn't care about yourself. But now you're starting to get to know yourself. You're realizing the impacts of how people treat you, because now you're very focused on your emotions, right? And where your emotions are coming from. That's very important. And when you put those two together, let's say when something happens to you, sometimes it takes a couple days because you don't notice the emotion right away, right? Because you're just getting to notice your emotions. And a lot of times we'll feel emotions and not notice because we're not consciously noticing them. But when they get loud enough, because this emotion is stuck in us, right? So the more it's stuck in us, the more it's like going fast and like turmoiling. So when it makes enough noise, we hear it. But then now we're saying, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from, right? What is the cause of this emotion? What is it exactly that's bothering me? And where is it coming from? And that is the most important question. Those are the two most important questions. Because now, you're like, they made me feel like that when they did that. Okay, well now, if you're up there, you're saying, okay, but is this my perspective? Is this how I perceived the situation? Is this how I absorbed this situation? Or was that their intention? And this is a very important step as well, is when you start to communicate. And you say, hey, I didn't like it when you did that. That made me feel like shit. Because now you're starting to treat yourself a little better. And you're noticing emotions, and when there's a repeated pattern, and you say, you did something that pissed me off. It made me feel like this. You start to communicate it because you're not going to keep it inside. Because now you're starting to get to know yourself, you're starting to get to know how you feel. And you're on a path to say, I want to treat myself like I treat other people. Why the fuck did you do that? Why did you say that? And then they can explain their side of the story. And now you have the complete story. In most times, unless you're with a fucking narcissist who's gonna gaslight you and make you even more confused. That is a whole other thing for a whole other episode. But I mean, in regular circumstance, I hope there's not that many narcissists in the world, but you never know. But yeah, so you really start to notice, because you're like, hey, that pissed me off. And then it gets easier and easier to notice the shit that pisses you off. And then that's why you start to lose so many friends in the beginning of your journey of spiritual awakening, of introspection, of getting to know who you are. Because in the process of getting to know who you are, the first thing you notice is how you treat yourself. And then also, because you're starting to notice how you treat yourself, how you make yourself feel, the way that you feel, now you're feeling your emotions and you're consciously aware of them. Now you're consciously aware of the emotions that other people cause. And those are the first emotions that you can allow to flow through and remove those people from your life. Because if they're not causing good emotions in your life and they don't belong in your life, you start to get tired of it. You're like, oh, you make me feel like fucking shit. Like, fuck off, right? And the more you love yourself, the universe will send these angels into your life. And I don't know, they'll just treat you nicely, right? So maybe it's someone on the bus. Maybe it's someone at work who noticed you were feeling like shit today. Who said, you know what? I've been noticing that you are doing better. I've been noticing that you're working on yourself. I noticed. Someone's going to say that and you're going to be like, wow, that person was so nice to me. I want everybody to treat me like that. And then you start to be tired of feeling like shit. Because now you're on a journey to help yourself, to be a better person, to be happier, to know who you are, to stop being so fucked up. So naturally you get rid of people who make you feel fucked up. Naturally. And that's just a normal thing. That's an absolutely normal thing. I think that it's not something to feel bad about at all. But it's hard. It's hard. Because now that you got rid of other people, you're forced to look into yourself. And now you gotta heal. And you gotta identify every single emotion that you have that has been stuck. Because let's say, like, you're like me, you're in a point of your life where it's fucking COVID. I got no fucking friends. I'm staying in my house. I went to therapy, and now I'm getting to know my inner child, and I've cut off everybody in my life who made me feel like shit. Everybody in my life who was not healthy for me in a way, and whatever. Because if you're the most successful person in your fucking friend group, you need to change your friend group. If you're the smartest person in your friend group, you need to change your fucking friend group. If you are the most spiritually woke in your friend group, you need to go find a more spiritually woke friend group. Because you're not gonna grow if you're the biggest in the room. You gotta get bigger. You have to. I feel like I was making a point. Fuck. Don't you hate it when that happens? I'm gonna drink some of my water. Because you want better. You want better for yourself. And when you get rid of everybody in your life, that's what I was saying. Yeah. So when you get rid of everybody in your life, now you're forced to introspect. But like we were saying before, you start to pinpoint what you feel and where it came from. And that is a long journey, because there's a lot of shit and a lot of emotions of things where they came from that now you have to process. You have to process, understand what happened, understand what you felt, understand your role in the situation, understand the other person's role in the situation, how you felt. Like, acknowledge that and accept it. Accept that it happened. Accept that it no longer exists. It is a moment that is in the past that no longer exists. And to forgive yourself for not knowing any better. I think that that's a really hard one when you're hashing through old shit. Because you feel so guilty. You feel so like it was your fault. It's true. And that's normal. But you didn't know any better. Because you know better now and you're not doing it, right? And I think that when you acknowledge that it happened, accept that it happened, but remind yourself how much you've grown. That is a hard thing to do. When you're doing this shadow work, when you're going through old emotions, that is the hardest part to remember, and it's the most important thing to remember, because you're going through shit that happened, and maybe it's a really fucked up thing. I've been there, where it's a really fucked up thing that happened, and I made really fucked up mistakes or decisions, but I didn't know any better at the time. Because we tend to think about the situation with the knowledge that we have today. And that's a wrong thing. It's the wrong thing to do. Because you have to go back to where you were, to the knowledge you had. Did you know better? And maybe you did, but you didn't love yourself better. You didn't know yourself better. You didn't love yourself to a point. You weren't nice to yourself. So no shit, you didn't care what happened, or you made a fucked up choice, or whatever you did. You didn't know better. You didn't love yourself like you do today. You didn't have the knowledge that you do today. And that's okay. Because today, you know better. And that's what's important. Because the goal in life is never to be outshining someone else, or to compare yourself to someone else, or to compare yourself to who you were yesterday. The goal in life is to become better than who you were yesterday. That's it. If you strive to be a little bit better, I have a golden rule. So I heard this on Instagram. Changed my life. It changed my life. This quote, 0.03%. If you strive to be 0.03% better, so 1/3 of 1% better every single day, it's not much. 1/3 of 1% is like 6 minutes of a day, is like 6 minutes. So as if you're like, I want to wake up at 5:30. Okay, do that. But wake up 6 minutes earlier every day than you do now until you get to 5:30. I think that's super doable, right? And if you do 0.03% better tomorrow than you did today, then in 1 year, you'll be 100% better, right? And you also have to realize, if you strive to be 0.03% better every day, you're not going to put as much pressure on yourself. It's the point that I was trying to make before. And you also have to realize, not a lot of people do this. A lot of people stay stuck in the same place forever, with the same mentality, the same old fucking stories, the same old fucking complaints, the same old fucking bullshit, the same car, the same house, the same fucking job, forever. A lot of people do that. It's not because you're on Instagram and you see the majority of the people on Instagram are doing hype things. Those are not all the people. Because the ain't shit people ain't posting shit. They're not posting shit. The ain't shit people are not posting on Instagram. That's why you're not seeing those people. Because the ancient people are not going to post that they're doing the same shit that they've been doing for their whole fucking life. So if you are doing this shadow work and you realize that you are better than the person you were when you made those mistakes, accept it. Be proud of yourself. For once, congratulate yourself. Say, you know what? I did a fucked up thing. It makes me feel like shit about myself. But to empower myself, I also acknowledge that I am a better person today. That situation made me learn XYZ, and that lesson led me to who I am today. Led me to have the knowledge that I have today. And it's in slowly doing this, with all the trauma and everything that happens, you get to a place where you're like, okay, I think I went through it all, right? Which takes a long time. And let me tell you, you're not done. Because you've gone through all the old bullshit, but now you've like isolated yourself. Like, I'm still in isolation mode. And the next step for me is to now process all the emotions right now, right? Which is hard because now you've been processing all the old emotions, and those are like more controlled, right? Because they're not right now. Maybe right now you're feeling the emotion, or, excuse me, you notice these feelings that recur, right? And then you kind of start to dive into them. But it's a lot safer than the current emotions, because the current emotions are right here, right now, right? Right here, right now, and you are at the phase in your life where you need to take care of that. You need to, like, because you notice it, and when you notice it, you have to acknowledge it. So that comes in there, right? And that's like re-putting yourself in the population, and it's difficult. It's difficult, but once you have gone through all the old shit and now you're capable of doing the new shit, what happens, all this journey that I've just explained, this really beautiful thing happens is now, because you're acknowledging your emotions, you're healing these really grimy parts of you, and you're just embracing yourself as a whole, because now you've gotten through all the bad shit. But slowly through all the bad shit, now you're noticing all the good shit. You're noticing how good of a person you really are, how you treat people. Because now that you've gotten to know who you are through your traumas, you're like, okay, this is who my trauma made me. But who the fuck am I? That whole segue that I just explained is getting to know who you are because of your traumas. Who are you really? Now that you know who the trauma made you be, who are you? And that is a lifelong journey. But as you get to know yourself, you get to know the good things about you. Things you love. How much you love that cake at the grocery store, or those donuts in the shop down the street. You notice how you start to dance, how you like certain music, and you start to enjoy taste and rewards a little more, and get yourself gifts, and you just start to be more okay with yourself. Buy yourself nice clothes, and then you start to treat yourself better, naturally. Because now that you've accepted and acknowledged all the trauma, you're starting to get to know yourself, the things that you love, the things that make you happy, the situations that make you happy, how much you love watching the sunset. And now you've gotten to know your inner child. And now you're starting to get to know yourself, the things that you love, the things that make you happy, the situations that make you happy, how much you love watching the sunset. And now you've gotten to know your inner child. And now you've gotten to know your inner child. and those like urges that you get, or you're like, I really want an ice cream. Instead, because that voice was always there when you were treating yourself like shit, that voice saying, I want an ice cream, was there, but that voice who was really mean was a lot louder. Go fuck yourself and your fucking ice creams, right? But now you listen to that voice, I want ice cream, and you're like, okay, yeah, let's go get some ice cream. And then you sit on a park bench and you eat your ice cream, and you're watching kids play in a puddle, and everything's just so perfect because that voice in your mind isn't so mean to you anymore, because you've gotten to know it a little bit, and you've come to accept that sometimes, most times, it's lying to you, that it's not true, it's not the reality of the situation. And you start to take care of yourself a little more, because you understand why you think the way that you do, and you've healed the part of you, the grimy part that made you treat yourself like shit. If you want to purchase Jordan Peterson's book, the link is in the description below. If you like this episode and you want to see another one, well, I'm going to post another one whether you want to see it or not, because I'm fucking here to stay. If you want to purchase Jordan Peterson's book, the link to the physical book and the audiobook are in the description below. And I will see you guys next week with episode 3 of Tea Time with Ayla. Cheers!